What is something your teacher did in school that you're still salty about? Story 1. At the end of my first week at a new school, the teacher handed out slips of paper with our current grade. I had a solid A at my old school, but the teacher said I had an F. I asked her why. She said I didn't hand in the quarter project. I reminded her that I had just moved to the school. She said she would give me the weekend to do it. The project was to interview a longtime local resident and write a paper about their experiences. The articles were being collected for a book she was writing. I failed the class. My wife relocated to a new school midway through her senior year. Her math teacher wanted her to make up all of the classwork she missed from that class, on top of all regular assignments going forward. After struggling for weeks, the guidance counselor's failed attempts at fixing the situation and unwillingness of the teacher to budge on her ridiculous requests, my wife dropped out. She was a straight-A student up to that point. Some teachers are fracking monsters. When my mom changed schools in 3rd grade, the first thing they did on her first day was a spelling test. When the teacher was grading them, she got to my mother's test, stood up, screamed at my mom, "In this school, we use cursive." My mom didn't know cursive, but the teacher said that wasn't an excuse and gave her detention. She stressed my mom out so badly that after a couple months of school, Mom ended up in the hospital with severe stomach ulcers. How do these people become teachers? Those sorts of stories make me hope if I ever have kids, they know to come to me with that and trust it'll get sorted immediately. Some teachers are fracking monsters. I come from a country that has 3 official languages. I was raised in 2 of them, so I was fluent. But as an Army brat, I had lived in another country for 8 years, so I had never been in contact with the 3rd. Well, the 3rd country is mandatory in school and from a certain age. So when I moved back there, I had to take the class. And I sucked at it. I learned and learned, but I couldn't get it right. So here I was, perfect or near perfect scores at other subjects, but according to this teacher, I was dumb as rocks. Because how could I fail at the official language of my own country? I would have to be stupid, right? Well, I buckled down and, unbeknownst to my parents, studied till 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning as a 9-year-old and failed again and again, every time getting punished and ridiculed by the teacher. That guy is the sole reason I stopped loving going to school, that all my other grades failed, just so he could prove to my parents how stupid I was. For some reason, this middle-aged dude took it upon himself to destroy this 9-year-old kid's life. I still blame him for fracking up my school career, all because I couldn't learn this one subject. Sucked the joy out of my life for a long time. When I was 9 and moved from an area of my country that is completely English-speaking to an area of my country that is heavily bilingual and students were heavily immersed in French from kindergarten, my first day of French class at my new school, the teacher told me we were only allowed to speak French the whole class period, and I would get detention for speaking English. I didn't know how to say a single sentence in French. I could tell you that chat meant cat, and I could count to 10. I didn't even know how to ask to go to the bathroom. They tried to hold me back a grade, despite me having high marks in every other class. After that, we moved every year, and every new school I went to had a different French dialect taught, formal French, Quebecois, even Haitian once, and at a different difficulty level. I never got a consistent French education. I now live in a predominantly French area, still in my 30s, and still can't speak it. All my neighbors are French, the stores are all in French, and most jobs are bilingual. Even completely surrounded by it on a daily basis, it just doesn't compute anymore. My brain seems to have long lost the ability to wrap my brain around it. Reminds me of a professor in university. From an analytical programming course, we could either do an exam, which was known to be hideously hard, or do a project thesis out of a collection of tasks he provided. One important rule was that we had to adhere religiously to his provided formatting, and to not put our names anywhere in the text and code we handed in. We were to only write it on the CD-ROM, because he would just compile all the projects and sell them as a book. Oh, just a lot of douchebaggery going on in there. At least 2 stories in there where they were getting free work from the students. That's awful. And how are these people expecting someone to just hit the ground running in something they didn't know about? That one where the 9-year-old is staying up till 2 or 3 in the morning to study is particularly awful. Story 2. I had a teacher accuse me and a classmate of cheating on an exam because we had the same answer. It was a multiple choice test, and she was upset we both had it correct. I'm sorry you don't suck at teaching as much as you think you do. Turns out you just suck at stats. This kind of reminded me of a stats joke or story or whatever you want to call it. 5 students who had an upcoming math test were having too much fun on a trip they were on, so they decided to skip the test and make up a lie to the teacher that they had a flat tire and could not get back. It worked, and the teacher said, "No problem, you can take your makeup." So they finally get back and take the makeup, happy that they're getting away with their ruse. They completed the first sheet of the exam and then noticed it was all worth just 20 points. They flipped over to the next page, a single question worth 80 points. Which tire was flat? Note to self, collaborate with friends on the details of the lie. I've heard that joke before, and that one was pretty funny. And that one I kind of have to side with the teacher. I don't know how many times the teacher has been lied to like that. Maybe the tests are that hard that students lie on a regular basis to get out of it like that, and that's what facilitated this test. Story 3. My English teacher admitted to marking down all my work by a grade because I think you could do better. Shrew, I was doing better, and you made it look like I wasn't. Caused me to stop even trying. My English teacher would give me 50% of every essay, presumably because she didn't want to read it and was going on reputation. So I decided to try really hard on all my essays for one semester and see if I could do better. I enlisted the help of my much, much smarter older sister to help me write all of my essays. A girl who had received 99% in this teacher's class in the past. Well, I still got 50% on every essay. So the last essay of the semester we worked long and hard on, and my sister was sure we would get a better mark. Shrew still gave me 50%. So my mom and sister went into the school and sat down with the teacher and principal and had it out with this teacher. She maintained that I was a 50% essay writer. In the English final, I got 80% on my essay with blind marking. Frack you, Ms. McDonald, you're a lazy shrew. I had that too in university. C or C- on every essay. Finally got my roommate who had an English Lit degree to help me proofread my final essay and make suggestions. He was teaching the concurrent class, and I still got a C. That sort of reminds me of that Malcolm in the Middle class where show where Malcolm helped Reese with homework and it got marked down, and it just proved that the teacher had it out for Reese just because of who Reese was, apparently. That is really awful. So far, I'm not seeing any repercussions on any of these teachers at all. I really hope we find a story down the line where there is one. Story 4. 20 years ago, we had to make a diorama. We all had them sitting on tables in the classroom, and one day some other kid was messing around, fell into the table, and smashed mine. I failed the assignment for having a smashed diorama. You got an F because some kid was fooling around and destroyed all your hard work? The teacher didn't even tell you to redo it? Did the kid get punished? I don't remember if the kid got punished, but I remember it was the morning we were supposed to present them to the class, and the teacher was all, "Maybe you should have put it somewhere more secure. Now you're not ready for your presentation." and then said something about how this should be a lesson to everyone that in life you have to have a backup plan for when things outside of your control ruin your plans. So you were supposed to have a backup diorama in your backpack or something? Would have been rich if they did that whole speech and the kid just pulled out another backup diorama. Wonder how teacher would react. Failed for being a smart mouth. If someone broke into your place of work in the middle of the night and destroyed your work computer, the company wouldn't fire you the next morning. What a douchebag. Story 5. Never gave my art a higher grade than a B+, even though she asked me every year if she could hold my art back to show everyone how to correctly apply a technique or what she wanted from everyone else that next year. Not good enough for an A, but this is perfect and it's what I want everyone to do. Which is it then? Shrew? In 3rd grade art class, we had to draw an object that the teacher placed on a table in the middle of the room. There were a few objects to choose from. I started drawing one of them and wasn't happy with it and was thinking of starting on a different one. Before I did, though, the teacher held up my drawing in front of the class to tell everyone how bad it was and point out everything wrong with it. I quietly just started drawing something else. I was a very shy kid. My new drawing was entered into a local show and won. Teacher never said anything to me about it and never gave it back. She hung it up in the classroom for years. I got the equivalent of a C for that class, normally an A student. F you, Mrs. Watkins. Fracking hate art teachers, with one exception. The ones who feel like school grandma and understand art are emotional. I'm a teacher. So far, every art teacher at all the schools I've taught at has graded on effort and attempting to complete the assignment. For instance, if the lesson is on crosshatching, they grade based on if you used crosshatching in the piece. Doesn't matter if it looks like complete smeg. You get 100 if you use crosshatching. I feel like that's the only way to grade art in school. You show the skills and have the students demonstrate them, but you can't grade on quality. Story 6. Threatened to hit me when, as a brand new midterm transfer in grade 3, I was too scared to speak to ask for her help, so I had tapped her on the arm instead to get her attention. Apparently, that warranted threatening to assault an 8-year-old in the 90s. I had been there less than 2 weeks and had just transferred from a school of 40 to a school of over 200. Some teacher did the same to me when I transferred from primary to middle grade. Small town, one school had kindergarten up to 4th grade, then the second one had 5th grade to 8th grade, then it was 9 to 12 at another one. I tapped her at recess because I had been waiting to ask her something for 10 minutes, and she wasn't looking at my raised hand. She absolutely lost it and berated me. Turns out she had had cancer in that arm not too long ago and wasn't comfortable being touched. I understand, but I didn't know about that, and I was only like 10 years old. I mean, sure, but deity, frack, have some self-control and be an adult. If a person can't handle something enough that they'll go off on a child like that, they've got a real problem, and it isn't the cancer in her arm. Doesn't sound like either of these teachers were willing to pay attention to students. Or at least they should have said at the beginning of the class, or when they just came in, don't do this, don't touch, don't tap, raise your hand if you, or do something else if you want to get attention. But that's just, threatening to assault kids? I'm surprised they're still teaching, if they are. I don't even know. What do you think? Story 7. I had really severe eczema on my hands as a kid. I used to keep them tucked up in my sleeves to avoid one person seeing them and 2 getting blood on my paper. Yes, it was that bad. She called me out during a test and said to take my hands out of my sleeves because it's not like that's going to help my grade. I was a shy kid and silently cried through the rest of the test. Also, I was a straight A gifted student, so why she was acting like I had poor grades I never knew. I'll never forget that woman being needlessly cruel to a child who was already in physical pain. Wow, what an actual demon spawn from the depths of hell. How are people like this allowed around children?
Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 8. I had left my calculator on my desk in physics class, and the teacher took it. I had engraved my initials on it, so it was unmistakable. My problem with this was that he always asked me during class if I had my calculator, and I told him I still couldn't find it. The end of the school year came around, and another student was snooping through his desk and found my calculator. All year, that douchebag was giving me a 0 for the day since I didn't have it. Plot twist? It was the other student who took your calculator and pretended to find the calculator on the teacher's desk. A teacher got fired at my school for stealing a kid's phone. Location tracking on phones was a relatively recent thing at that time, so she wasn't expecting that. They also found some illicit white substance powder in the same drawer. Edit. I know it was the substance that ultimately got her fired, but the impetus for the search was the phone, so I stand by it. Story 9. My third grade teacher gave me marks down for spelling a lot, A-L-O-T, which her dumb frack butt corrected as a lot, A-L-O-T, no spaces. I will probably spend the rest of my life still annoyed with her, and I'm 36. Oh, same here. When I was 10 years old, Netherlands, don't know what grade it corresponds with, I got a 90% mark instead of a 100% for a test because I made a mistake. According to my teacher, it's spelled P-I-R-P-L-E, purple, not P-U-R-P-L-E, purple. Man, she was dumb. You take the blue pill, the story ends. If you take the purple pill, everything in the story is misspelled. I had a teacher one time who deducted a point because I used the wrong spelling of a word. It has 2 generally accepted spellings, one of which I used. Also, this was a science class, so something as petty as this didn't actually matter or affect my answer at all. Edit. Oh, also, he deducted points from a classmate because he didn't believe that things could be negatively correlated. Story 10. In grade 4, my teacher kept making me redo my printing sheets because my handwriting wasn't neat. Eventually, I asked him why he didn't make any of the boys redo their sheets because they had messy handwriting too. I still remember the look of shock on his face, but didn't understand the significance at the time because I was just genuinely asking. I don't remember what he said afterwards, other than the fact that I didn't find his answer satisfying. This is fascinating. What sexist smeg? My ex's parents asked her math teacher how they could better prepare for exams at home since she was getting a B and really wanted to do better. His response was, "Oh, she's doing fine. Girls don't have to be good at math anyway." She ended up being an accountant. Story 11. One of my high school art classes was called 3D design, which was basically clay, sculpting, and various 3-dimensional artwork. On the first day of class, my teacher pulled me aside and told me she looked at my schedule, which was mostly honors and advanced level classes. She said that because I was clearly such a good student, she would grade me on a much harsher scale and would hear none of my objections that being book smart doesn't translate to artistic abilities. The poor marks I received in that class skewered my GPA. If she gave tougher work, I would somewhat understand, but fracking up your grade is crazy. I've seen this with those artsy teachers. They usually have a chip on their shoulder against STEM students and treat them like smeg. I had a similar situation with my teacher. Story 12. In middle school, I did a display with real fossils that my parents had let me borrow. The teacher was insistent that I sell the fossils to him, but I refused. So the teacher gave me an F on the display. What the frack? Did you tell your parents about it? I know at that age it can be hard, no judgment if you didn't. Reminds me of when I was 9 or 10 years old and made a presentation on minerals and rock identification. I had a rock collection, and someone stole one of my larger natural crystals. It might have been purple fluorite with galena, amethyst, or citrine. I can't recall. I was so sad when I noticed that I couldn't present well, and my teacher told me to get over it. She's the one that insisted everyone store their presentation materials in a room that wasn't supervised and far from the classroom. I got a low mark for that presentation, obviously. Story 13. She told me to get the hell out of her classroom because I forgot to get something signed by my mom. She then marked me as truant and played dumb when the principal got involved. Similar story. My mother had me relay a question to my kindergarten teacher about an upcoming field trip. When I asked, my teacher started screaming at me. I don't recall all she said other than continuing to call me stupid and threatening to have me paddled by the principal. I just remember going back and wanting to hide under my desk with everyone staring at me. This was just one example of her behavior. That smeg impacted me for years. Story 14. My Spanish teacher was not good at her job. It took 3 years, and all I can do is ask where the library and bathrooms are in Spanish. She was very good at berating us and giving us life lessons. For example, I once had a pen break in the class before, and it left me without a writing utensil and asked to borrow one. The entirety of our 45-minute class was a lecture on how in the real world forgetting wouldn't fly. Anyway, I played football and had a few teammates in class, and the year before this, I sat behind a girl 1 year ahead of me, and we caused trouble quite a bit, so I was automatically on her smeg list. Some of my teammates decided since the answer book was on her desk, they would abscond with it for a bit, write down all the answers to the upcoming quiz, and just copy the answers back onto the quiz. This cheat sheet was offered to me, and I declined. I actually wanted to learn. Well, their scheme worked, until she began to grade them near the end of class. Half of the answers were answers may vary in Spanish, and my dipsmeg teammates didn't bother to figure this out. Once she figured out it was the football guys, I think 3 or 4, not including me, were the culprits, she sent all of the players into the hall, called the principal down, and began requesting write-ups. I walked back into the classroom, grabbed my stuff, and started toward my locker that was only a few feet away. I'm being yelled at by both teacher and principal now. After finishing putting my stuff away, all I said was, "You might want to actually check my exam before we continue on. I'm going to lunch." I never received an apology of any kind. Story 15. I had an English professor in college that constantly remarked that I had some of the best work in the class, but would consistently give me B+ or A- grades on my essays, saying I could do better, and if I did, then I'd earn the highest marks. For the end of semester essay, I went all out and really poured all my effort into the assignment. I finally achieved an A, not an A+ though, and was very proud, until I saw another classmate's grade of B+, which was absolutely littered with syntax errors, spelling mistakes, run-on sentences, awful formatting. I mean the whole 9 yards. It was a paper whose ceiling at the absolute most was a C. I brought this up with her, and she straight up told me that he struggled in class, so she tried to grade him less harshly and that his ideas in the essay were pretty decent. I wasn't mad at him because he too tried his hardest. I'm glad he got a good grade. But I was furious that I was graded so meticulously, and then she applied an arbitrary curve to him. I was thinking to myself, if his paper is a B+, then mine is 110 out of 100. Seeing as it was the end of the semester and the last English class I ever needed to take, it was a gen ed class my college required everyone to take, I was just glad to never see her again. Still gets me a little angry every time I think about it, though. Story 16. I have no idea. It was extra weird because prior to this, I had never been in trouble in her class, and I liked her. Although I was socially shy, I was not shy in the classroom. I regularly participated in class discussions, answered questions, volunteered for reading, etc., and genuinely got the impression that she liked me as a student. After she embarrassed me like that, I just completely wrote her off and didn't care to participate or talk to her anymore. I'm almost 37, and I still remember exactly how I felt in that moment.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.